TV PG. Clarence Brandley was sentenced to die for a crime he did not commit. Why? Brandley was but the latest victim caught up in a web of lies and racial hatred that defined this small Texas town long before Brandley was born. On the surface, Clarence Brandley's hometown of Conroe, Texas, appears peaceful and neighborly.
Conroe is like any other town in this country.
But the peaceful image masks a violent past. Over the last 100 years, 13 black men have been lynched by white mobs. Many of the killings occurred within sight of this courthouse. And in 1980, history was about to repeat itself.
The scenery might look good, but racism is prevalent throughout this country. All you got to do is say that someone black did it.
From the moment 16-year-old Cheryl Ferguson was brutally murdered, Brandley didn't have a chance.
The police officer said, "You're the nigger, you're elected," meaning we're charging you with the case.
I had cooperated with the law enforcement. I'd given my head hair, given my pubic hair, given my saliva, gave blood. I'd taken a polygraph test, I'd passed the test, and then on a Friday I was arrested.
After his arrest, that Ranger Stiles pulled his pistol and threatened to shoot him if he wouldn't confess.
Even with a gun to his head, Clarence Brandley insisted he was innocent. In court, he pleaded not guilty.
I was very upset, I was very nervous. I was being tried by an all-white jury. It was like an uncertainty. You don't know what was going to happen. I never would have expected that it would even got to this point.
In Brandley's first trial, only one juror believed Clarence was innocent.
It got so bad for him that the 11 other jurors yelled and screamed and intimidated him, forced him into the restroom at one point, banging on the door, calling him, and I'll say it, a nigger lover.
Without his vote for conviction, there was a hung jury. Denied bail, Clarence remained behind bars until his next trial.
It was very hard for me being locked up for something I knew I didn't do, and the state knew that I didn't do it. And being away from my kids, my son was getting ready to come and live with me.
It was devastating. I knew he was hurt, knowing that he couldn't be with the ones he loved.
The jury in Clarence's second trial was also all white.
We learned that the district attorney's manual that was teaching the prosecutors what to do when they pick juries forbid them from selecting a black on a case where a black is the defendant.
In this community, everybody, or almost everybody, assumed that Clarence was guilty. It was horrible the way they treated Clarence. In fact, we had a meeting with the sheriff and the DA present, and they both referred to Clarence as a little nigger.
That same inflammatory language also found its way into the courtroom.
There was an elderly lady, and to really get a clear picture of the atmosphere and of just the culture in Montgomery County, this lady was well dressed, and she would just whisper, "Kill the nigger, kill the nigger." It was almost like a chant.
Clarence's second trial lasted just over 2 weeks, and it took the jury just 45 minutes to return with a verdict: guilty. The next day, Clarence Brandley was sentenced to die by lethal injection.
My whole world flashed in front of me, and to be on death row is not a picnic, so it was a living hell for me day to day.
After almost 4 years on death row, time was running out. Clarence said goodbye to his children.
They was crying, and I started to cry. So it was very upsetting to see that and to know that I shouldn't be there in the first place.
I explained it to his kids and let them know that their father, he was innocent. You know, he loved them, he cared for them, and that we had faith. God was going to deliver him.
Clarence's lawyers didn't give up. 14 days before he was scheduled to die, Brandley was granted a stay of execution.
My first execution date, I was weighing 240. Before I got that stay, I'd lost weight down to something like 115. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. It was almost like fasting.
To save Clarence's life, his lawyers needed to find Cheryl Ferguson's murderer. The conspiracy of secrets started to break down in 1986. Brenda Medina told investigators that a former janitor, James Robinson, had confessed to the murder.
He came in that night between 12:30 and 1, and he told me that he had to leave town. And I asked him why. He said that he had to leave town because he had killed a girl at the high school.
Even with Medina's explosive new testimony, an appeal for a new hearing was denied and another execution date was set. In need of help and hoping for a miracle, Brandley's family got in touch with Reverend Jim McCloskey.
By the time I come into this, a month before the execution, the defense had pretty much had the wind knocked out of it. They were pretty desperate for some new avenue to revive this legally, and they had nothing.
Jim McCloskey took Clarence Brandley's story to Harry Reisner of 60 Minutes. On the day of the murder, janitors John Sessom and Gary Ackerman worked side by side in the school. In a shocking revelation, Sessom admitted to Reisner he actually witnessed Cheryl Ferguson's abduction.
I went and got a drink of water and came back. I seen someone grab
the girl?
Yeah.
Was it Gary, as far as you could see?
That's a question I can't answer.
Or was there someone else there?
There was somebody else up.
Well, this man you saw up on the next landing or up on the next flight with the girl and with Gary.
Yes, sir.
Was it this man?
Yes, sir.
James Robinson.
Yes, sir.
John Sessom says Clarence Brandley didn't appear at the scene until 5 minutes after Cheryl Ferguson stopped screaming. So why didn't he say this 7 years ago?
I had my reasons, sir.
You had your reason?
Yes, sir.
What were they?
Scared.
But he said to us, I let an innocent girl to go to her death, and I've been having nightmares ever since. But if I don't come forward and help bring the truth forward to save another innocent person, Clarence Brandley, I can't live with myself.
The 60 Minutes expose also included a videotape of Gary Ackerman. He admitted he saw James Robinson force Cheryl Ferguson into the bathroom.
What did he do when he grabbed her? After he grabbed her?
I dragged her in the bathroom.
You saw him drag her into the bathroom? Did she say anything at that point? Was she yelling for help or anything? What did she say? What did you hear her say?
She said, no, help.
When 60 Minutes aired their piece in early April, just 2 weeks later, everything started to change. This case had been dead, absolutely dead. And in a matter of 3 or 4 weeks, it sprung to life and resurrected itself. And we now were on the way to having our day in court.
When 60 Minutes aired his story on my behalf, everybody on the cell block was cheering. I had support from the guards, I had support from the other inmates.
It gave Brandley's cries of innocence credibility. And now people who knew something and were no longer alone, they felt that power. Next thing we knew, we had witness after witness presenting themselves with new evidence.
It even had the most racist people in Conroe thinking, gosh, we look racist.
Clarence still feared that the Conroe courthouse, witness to a history of racial violence, was not about to suddenly change. His only hope was to get a hearing somewhere else. His supporters in Conroe and Austin protested on his behalf and risked their own lives.
People said, you can't do that, it's not safe. You know, their death threats. The Klan is meeting tonight. They burned a cross in the outskirts of Conroe the night before to change the venue hearing while we're sleeping on the courthouse ground.
The tension escalated to the point where it was explosive. I mean, it was beyond tension.
I remember the judge took his pipe out of his mouth and he said, son, what you're seeing is the First Amendment, freedom of speech, at play. I think at that point we knew we were going to get a fair hearing.
I knew that this was the last chance to prove, and it would come out in court that I didn't actually commit the crime.
The judge concluded, after hearing 46 defense witnesses and a handful of prosecution witnesses, that Clarence was innocent. He ruled that as a finding of fact. He ruled as a finding of fact that Gary Ackerman and James Dexter Robinson did this crime.
I began to cry. I was not allowed to hug anyone or touch anybody with the exception of my attorneys. But I wanted to reach out and hug my mother and tell my brothers and sisters how much I loved them.
And to see him take his handkerchief out and tears come from his eyes and to wipe his eyes, it's gone on long enough.
"9 years, 4 months, and 25 days after Clarence Brandley was first put in chains for a crime he did not commit, he walked out of prison a free man.
How do you feel? It's a great feeling just walking outside of the gate and knowing that now I'm standing on some grass, you know, knowing it's on concrete and I'm not without handcuffs.
Clarence Brandley now lives in Houston, and he drives a tow truck for the city. His faith in God sustained him throughout his 10-year ordeal, and today he is a Baptist minister. However, Clarence Brandley is still not completely free. He filed a suit, wrongful imprisonment.
After the state learned that I had filed a suit, 2 weeks later I received a notice that I owed $48,000 back child support. While I was locked up, they wanted me to still pay child support. And still to this day, they're taking child support out of my check every week.
To date, he has not received a penny or any apology from the state of Texas. And Gary Ackerman and James Dexter Robinson have yet to be arrested or charged with the horrific murder of Cheryl Ferguson. Clarence Lee Brandley has not lived in Conroe since his arrest in 1980. The only time he returns is to see his relatives.